Good morning, everyone. Um, okay, so something extraordinary is trying to break through your skepticism right now, isn't it? Information that doesn't fit the narrative you've been living. Possibilities that feel too good, too aligned, too perfect to trust. But what if your disbelief is the last barrier between you and something genuinely miraculous? Let me share what I'm perceiving in the dimensional layers surrounding you right now. The first thing emerging is this sense you might be having of being on the precipice of understanding something that will fundamentally alter your reality. You could be experiencing moments where you catch glimpses of a truth so different from what you've accepted as possible, so contradictory to limitations you've internalized that your mind immediately dismisses it as fantasy. You might be picking up on whispers from your deeper knowing that insist something extraordinary is available to you, while your conditioned thinking argues that people like you don't get breaks like that, don't experience turnarounds that dramatic, don't deserve miracles without more suffering first. Here's what you could be observing in the substance of your daily existence. You might be noticing signs that don't fit your pessimistic projections. Doors cracking open that you thought were permanently sealed, people responding to you with unexpected warmth or opportunity, circumstances rearranging themselves in ways that favor you rather than obstruct you. You could be picking up on a current beneath visible events, a momentum building toward outcomes you stopped letting yourself hope for because hope felt too dangerous after previous disappointments. You might be experiencing cognitive dissonance between what your eyes are seeing and what your protective beliefs insist is the only realistic expectation. What's coalescing in the probability matrix is that you could be approaching realization that your story about yourself has been too small. You might be sensing that identities you've worn, victim, struggler, person who just can't catch a break, are costumes you've mistaken for skin, narratives you've confused with unchangeable truth. You could be picking up on invitations to step into entirely different self-concept. One where you're someone whom good things happen to, someone whose life can transform rapidly, someone worthy of ease and abundance and love without having to earn it through endless trials. This reflection invites you to consider what you'd have to release about your identity in order to receive what's actually trying to reach you, and whether staying attached to familiar suffering feels safer than risking the vulnerability of allowing yourself to be happy. You might be noticing that you're experiencing resistance even as you're drawn toward what I'm suggesting. You could be picking up on part of yourself that wants desperately to believe, that's tired of cynicism, that's ready for something beautiful, while another part immediately activates protective skepticism. You might be sensing internal conflict between the child in you who still believes in magic and the wounded adult who's learned not to trust anything that sounds too good. And that war between hope and self-protection is exhausting you, even as it keeps you from fully receiving what's approaching. What's radiating through the etheric architecture is that you could be dealing with multiple areas of life showing simultaneous improvement. You might be picking up on shifts that aren't isolated to one domain, but affecting relationships, finances, health, purpose, all at once in ways that feel orchestrated by intelligence beyond your individual effort. You could be experiencing what some call synchronistic flow or divine intervention or simply luck finally turning. And the coordinated nature of these positive developments is part of what makes them hard to accept as real rather than temporary fluke. What's particularly challenging about what I'm witnessing is that you might be approaching good fortune that you haven't earned through struggle. You could be sensing that blessings are arriving without the prerequisite suffering you've been conditioned to believe is mandatory. That you're being given things you wanted without having to sacrifice what you love. That ease is available without preceding punishment. You might be picking up on grace rather than karma. And if you've built your entire framework around you get what you deserve based on what you endure, receiving unearned goodness short circuits that whole system and leaves you without familiar map for making sense of experience. You might be observing that other people see shifts in you that you're not fully acknowledging yourself. You could be experiencing comments about how different you seem, lighter, more open, more radiant, while you still feel like same person carrying same wounds. You might be picking up on external mirrors reflecting transformation you haven't fully integrated internally. And that gap between how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself is information about blind spots in your self-assessment, about changes happening beneath your conscious awareness. What's threading through the temporal fabric is that you could be dealing with answers to requests you stopped consciously holding. You might be receiving responses to prayers you gave up on, solutions to problems you resigned yourself to living with, fulfillment of desires you trained yourself to stop wanting. You could be picking up on the way universe operates on its own timeline, how delay doesn't equal denial, how what felt like abandonment was actually preparation period, where conditions were being arranged for optimal reception of what you asked for. This reflection invites you to consider what you stopped asking for because you decided it was impossible, and whether you're willing to resurrect those desires. Now, that evidence suggests impossibility might have been misdiagnosis rather than accurate prognosis. You might be noticing that you're experiencing physical sensations accompanying these shifts. You could be picking up on energy moving through your body differently. Tingles, warmth, lightness in chest where heaviness used to live, expansion in belly where contraction was habitual. You might be sensing that your cellular structure is responding to changing external conditions before your cognitive understanding catches up as less than has hone. Zero hash is greater than, and trusting somatic knowing over mental interpretation is requiring you to privilege body's wisdom over mind's protective doubt. What's also surfacing is that you could be dealing with fear disguised as realism. You might be experiencing yourself claiming to just be practical or not getting hopes up, when what's actually happening is you're terrified that if you believe good things are coming and they don't materialize, the disappointment will destroy you. You could be picking up on how past heartbreaks have trained you to expect the worst, and recognizing that what feels like wisdom is actually trauma response helps you distinguish between appropriate caution and reflexive self-sabotage through preemptive rejection of possibility. The resonant harmonics suggest you might be experiencing this as testing of your faith in benevolent universe. You could be sensing that life is asking whether you can trust goodness, whether you can hold belief that things can work out even without proof, whether you can stand in expectation of positive outcomes without ironclad guarantee. You might be picking up on spiritual invitation embedded in practical circumstances. Call to develop new relationship with uncertainty, with hope, with your own deservingness of joy that doesn't need to be catastrophically earned. What's significant is that you could be approaching a moment where your choice to believe or not believe actually influences outcomes. You might be dealing with quantum possibility, where your consciousness isn't just observing reality, but participating in its creation. where your expectation actually shapes what manifests. You could be picking up on your own power in this process, recognizing that cynicism isn't neutral observer position, but active force that closes doors optimism might have kept open, that your belief or disbelief has material consequences. This reflection invites you to consider what you'd be risking by allowing yourself to believe, and whether that risk is actually greater than the certain loss of staying locked in defensive pessimism that prevents you from seeing or receiving genuine opportunities. You might be picking up on specific area of life where breakthrough is most imminent. You could be experiencing strong pulls toward particular domain. Romantic relationship, feeling especially alive with possibility. Financial situation showing most dramatic shift. Creative projects suddenly gaining traction. You might be noticing that while multiple areas are improving, one arena is particularly charged with potential for transformation that will ripple outward, affecting everything else. What I'm witnessing in the structural lattice is that you could be dealing with support appearing from unexpected quarters. You might be picking up on help arriving through sources you didn't think to ask. Strangers offering assistance, systems working in your favor, resources becoming available right when you need them without you having to beg or manipulate. You could be experiencing what it feels like when universe conspires on your behalf and adjusting to being supported rather than having to white knuckle everything alone is disorienting after a lifetime of self-reliance born from necessity rather than choice. The vibrational blueprints suggest you might be experiencing this as recognition that you've been living in artificial scarcity. You could be sensing that limitations you accepted as inherent to your situation were actually constructed by your beliefs, by others' projections, by systems designed to keep certain people small. You might be picking up on your own power to step outside those constraints, to operate in different paradigm where abundance is natural state and restriction is what requires explanation. What's also coming through is that you could be dealing with grief alongside joy as you recognize what's now possible. You might be experiencing sadness about years spent believing you couldn't have what you wanted, anger about who convinced you to think small, loss over time you won't get back when you were tolerating less than you deserved. You could be picking up on complex emotional texture, where excitement about future is mixed with mourning for past you lived in cage of false limitations. This reflection invites you to consider whether you can hold both grief for what was lost and gratitude for what's arriving, and whether processing pain about past is necessary prerequisite for fully receiving different future, or whether you can release old suffering without first understanding every reason it happened. You might be noticing that you're experiencing urge to share what you're sensing with others, but hesitation about being dismissed. You could be picking up on desire for witnesses to your transformation. People who can reflect back that yes, something real is shifting while simultaneously fearing judgment from those invested in your staying stuck. You might be sensing wisdom in being selective about who you let into your tender new hope, protecting emerging possibilities from people whose doubt would contaminate your fragile trust. What's pulsing through the dimensional gateways is that you could be approaching choice point that determines which timeline you enter. You might be sensing fork in road, where one path leads to radical transformation and other leads to continuation of familiar struggle. And your willingness to believe what feels unbelievable is literally the mechanism that determines which path you walk. You could be picking up on your own agency in this, understanding that you're not passive recipient but active co-creator, that your consciousness matters in determining what becomes real. So as you sit with information that strains your credibility, that asks you to trust beyond what your history justifies, notice what's actually happening in your direct experience. You might be so focused on protecting yourself from potential disappointment that you're missing actual evidence of positive change already occurring. Look at what's real right now, not what might go wrong, not what similar situations led to before, but what's actually true in this present moment. Let yourself consider the possibility that you're not foolish for hoping, naive for believing, setting yourself up for fall by expecting good things. You might be experiencing a voice that says optimism is weakness. But what if that voice is liar? What if cynicism has been the real trap? What if your suspicion of good fortune has been the very thing keeping good fortune at bay? Try on different interpretation is less than has hone. Zero hash is greater than that. Trusting possibility is actually the brave choice. That opening to blessings despite fear of loss is courage rather than foolishness. You're being asked to believe in something extraordinary. Not because you have proof, not because logic supports it, not because it makes sense given your history, but because somewhere beneath all your protection and doubt, something true is trying to reach you. Listen to that, knowing it's been accurate before, even when you didn't honor it. It's accurate now, even though what it's telling you feels impossible. The hard to believe thing isn't that you're being lied to or manipulated into false hope. The hard to believe thing is that you actually deserve and are about to receive something beautiful. Let yourself believe it. Your willingness to trust might be the final key that unlocks everything.